morning television host sits down for what should be a friendly chat with royalty, only to witness one of the most shocking displays of entitlement ever caught on camera. It only took 37 seconds of Prince Harry speaking before the entire interview spiraled into absolute chaos. This is the story of the morning that changed everything. Lorraine Kelly had been preparing for this interview for weeks. Her team had coordinated every detail, from the lighting to the questions, making sure everything would be perfect for such a high-profile guest. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement. People had lined up outside since the early hours of the morning, desperate to catch a glimpse of Prince Harry in person. Lorraine, ever the professional, sat in her chair with her signature warm smile, ready to welcome him onto her show. When Prince Harry walked onto the set, the audience erupted in applause. He waved casually, but there was something off about his demeanor. Lorraine stood up to greet him, extending her hand for a handshake. "Welcome, welcome. It's so lovely to have you here," Lorraine said, her voice full of genuine warmth. Prince Harry barely looked at her hand before sitting down. He didn't shake it. He just dropped into the chair and let out a long sigh, as if being there was some kind of burden he had to endure. Lorraine, professional as always, brushed it off and took her seat. The cameras were rolling. The audience was watching. This was live television, and she knew how to handle difficult guests. She'd done this for years. "So, thank you so much for joining us this morning," Lorraine began, her smile never faltering. "I know you've got so much going on, and our viewers are absolutely thrilled to hear from you." Prince Harry looked at her with a blank expression. "Yeah, well, I'm here, aren't I?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. That wasn't exactly the gracious response anyone expected. Lorraine, sensing the tension, pushed forward. "You certainly are, and we're delighted. Now, I wanted to start by talking about some of the wonderful charity work you've been involved with recently. It's really inspiring what you've been doing." Prince Harry leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Charity work. Right. You know, Lorraine, can I just say something?" "Of course," Lorraine replied, still maintaining her composure. "I find it quite interesting that whenever I come on these shows, all anyone wants to talk about is charity work, or my family, or some carefully prepared list of questions that don't actually mean anything. Does anyone actually care, or is this just for the cameras?" The studio went silent. You could hear the uncomfortable shuffling of feet in the audience. Lorraine's smile tightened, just slightly, but she remained calm. "Well, I think our viewers genuinely do care," Lorraine said carefully. "They want to know about the causes that matter to you, the things you're passionate about. That's why you're here, isn't it? To share that?" Prince Harry scoffed. Actually scoffed on live television. "Is it though? Or am I here because your producers thought having me on would boost your ratings?" Lorraine's smile finally faded. Not into anger, but into something more serious. She leaned forward slightly, her journalist instincts kicking in. "I think that's a bit unfair," she said, her voice steady. "We invite guests onto this show because we believe they have something valuable to share with our audience. We've prepared thoughtful questions because we respect you and your time." "Respect," Prince Harry repeated, laughing without humor. "Lorraine, do you know what it's like to have every single person you meet want something from you? Everyone has an agenda. Everyone wants a piece of you. And then they pretend it's all about respect and genuine interest." The audience was frozen. This was not going the way anyone had anticipated. Lorraine took a breath, clearly trying to steer the conversation back. "I can only imagine how challenging that must be," she said diplomatically. "But I hope you know that here, we simply wanted to have a conversation. That's all." "A conversation," Prince Harry said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Right. Well, let's have a real conversation then. Let's talk about how the media twists everything. Let's talk about how shows like this make their money off people's private lives." Lorraine's expression shifted. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't going to let that slide. This show has always been about connecting with people, sharing stories, and bringing a bit of positivity to people's mornings, Lorraine said firmly. We've never claimed to be anything other than what we are. And I've always treated my guests with respect and dignity. Have you, though? Prince Harry challenged. Because it feels like I'm just another name on your booking list, another celebrity you can parade in front of your audience. Lorraine shook her head slowly. That's absolutely not true, and I think you know that. But if that's how you feel, then perhaps we should address it directly. What would you like to talk about? And what would make this feel like a genuine conversation to you? Prince Harry looked taken aback for a moment, as if he hadn't expected Lorraine to actually challenge him. He shifted in his seat. I don't know, Lorraine. Maybe I just don't want to be here at all. The audience gasped. Lorraine blinked, processing what he'd just said. Then why did you agree to come? Lorraine asked, her voice calm but pointed. Maybe I made a mistake, Prince Harry replied. Lorraine nodded slowly. Well, if you truly feel that way, then I'm not going to force you to stay. But I do think it's a shame. We had an opportunity here to have a meaningful conversation, and instead, you've spent the last few minutes being quite rude. Not just to me, but to everyone who came here today hoping to hear from you. Prince Harry's face reddened. Rude. I'm being rude. You're the one putting me on the spot, asking invasive questions. I asked you about your charity work, Lorraine said, her patience clearly wearing thin, but her professionalism still intact. That's hardly invasive. That's public information that you yourself have shared before. It's the way you ask it, Prince Harry shot back. It's all so fake, so rehearsed. You're reading from a script, Lorraine. Where's the authenticity in that? Lorraine picked up her notes and set them aside. There, no script. Let's talk. What's really going on here? Because this anger doesn't seem to be about me or this show. It seems like something deeper. Prince Harry stood up abruptly. You don't get to psychoanalyze me. I'm not trying to, Lorraine said, remaining seated, her voice still calm. I'm trying to understand why you're being so hostile. Maybe because I'm tired of people like you acting like you know me, Prince Harry said, his voice rising. You sit there with your friendly smile and your kind words. But at the end of the day, how you're just another person trying to get a story out of me. Lorraine stood up now, not in aggression, but in assertion. That's not fair, and you know it. I've been doing this job for decades, and I've never exploited anyone who sat in that chair. I ask questions. I listen. I give people a platform to share their truth. If you don't want to use that platform, that's your choice. But don't accuse me of something I haven't done. Prince Harry pointed at her. See? This is what I'm talking about. The second I push back, you get defensive. I'm not defensive, Lorraine said firmly. I'm standing up for myself and my show. There's a difference. You came here, you agreed to this interview, and now you're acting as if we've somehow wronged you. We haven't. We've treated you with nothing but respect. Respect would be not treating me like a circus act, Prince Harry retorted. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. A circus act? Is that really what you think this is? What else would you call it? Prince Harry said. You put me on stage, you get your audience to clap, you ask your little questions, and everyone goes home happy. Except me. Because I'm the one who has to live with being reduced to entertainment. Lorraine took a step closer, her voice quiet but powerful. Then maybe you should ask yourself why you keep saying yes to these interviews. Because nobody forced you to be here. You made that choice. And if you're not happy with it, that's on you, not on me. Prince Harry's jaw tightened. You know what, Lorraine? You're right. I shouldn't be here. Then leave, Lorraine said simply. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Nobody expected Lorraine to actually say that. But she stood there, unwavering, her arms crossed, waiting for his response. Prince Harry stared at her, clearly not expecting her to call his bluff. What did you just say? I said leave, Lorraine repeated, If you're so unhappy being here, if you think this is beneath you, then go. The door's right there. I'm not going to beg you to stay." Prince Harry looked around at the cameras, at the audience, at the crew members standing off to the side. Everyone was watching. This was the moment. He could apologize, he could sit back down, he could try to salvage the interview, or he could walk. "Fine," Prince Harry said, ripping off his microphone. "I will." He started walking toward the exit. The audience sat in stunned silence. Lorraine stood there, composed, watching him go. But then he stopped. He turned around. "You know what the problem is, Lorraine," Prince Harry said, his voice echoing across the studio. "People like you think you're so much better than everyone else. You think because you've been on television for years that you've earned some kind of moral high ground. But you're just as much a part of this machine as anyone else." Lorraine didn't flinch. "I've never claimed to be perfect, but I know who I am, and I know what this show stands for. And it's not what you're describing." "Of course you'd say that," Prince Harry said bitterly, "because admitting the truth would mean admitting you're part of the problem." "The problem," Lorraine said slowly, "is that you walked in here with an agenda. You wanted to be angry. You wanted to pick a fight. And now you're trying to make me the villain, because I didn't play along." Prince Harry laughed, but it was cold. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I believe," Lorraine said, her voice cutting through the tension, "that you're taking out your frustrations on the wrong person. I'm not your enemy. I never was. But if you want to treat me like one, then there's nothing I can do about that." Prince Harry shook his head. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so convinced you're right." "And you're not?" Lorraine countered. That stopped him. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Lorraine continued, her voice softer now, but no less firm. "Look, I get it. You're frustrated. You feel like people don't see the real you, but lashing out at me, at this show, at our audience, that's not going to fix anything. It's just going to make you look like someone who can't handle a simple conversation." "Simple conversation," Prince Harry repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "Fine, there's nothing simple about any of this." "Then help me understand," Lorraine said. "Sit back down. Talk to me. Really talk to me. Not with all this anger and defensiveness, but as one person to another. That's all I've ever wanted." Prince Harry stood there, torn. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually do it, like he might sit back down and try to have a real conversation. But then his pride took over. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think I will." He turned and walked toward the exit again. This time, he didn't stop. The heavy studio door opened, and he disappeared through it. The audience sat in complete silence. Lorraine stood in the middle of the stage, alone, the empty chair beside her a stark reminder of what had just happened. She took a deep breath, smoothed down her jacket, and looked directly into the camera. "Well," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "That was unexpected." A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience. Lorraine smiled, that same warm smile she always had, even though you could see the weight of what had just happened in her eyes. "I think," she continued, "that we all just witnessed something quite extraordinary. Not in a good way, necessarily, but extraordinary nonetheless. I want to say this clearly, because I think it's important. I have nothing but respect for everyone who comes on this show. I mean that. But respect has to go both ways, and what you all just saw was someone who, for whatever reason, couldn't or wouldn't extend that same courtesy back." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "I don't know what Prince Harry is going through. I don't know what pressures he's facing, or what led him to behave the way he did today. But I do know this. When you agree to come on a show, when you accept an invitation to sit down and have a conversation, you owe it to everyone involved, the host, the crew, the audience, to show up with at least a basic level of respect. And today, that didn't happen." Lorraine walked back to her chair and sat down, her composure never breaking. "We're going to take a quick break," she said to the camera, "and when we come back, we've got some wonderful guests lined up who I know are going to bring a lot of positivity and warmth to the rest of the show. Because that's what we do here. We lift people up, we celebrate the good. And we don't let moments like this define us." The camera pulled back, showing the empty chair next to Lorraine, a visual representation of everything that had gone wrong. The studio lights dimmed slightly as they cut to commercial. Behind the scenes, the crew was in chaos. Producers were scrambling, trying to figure out what to do next. Phone calls were being made. Damage control was already starting. But Lorraine, she just sat there quietly, taking a sip of water, and preparing for the next segment. One of the producers approached her during the break. "Are you okay?" Lorraine nodded. "I'm fine. Let's just move on." "That was incredible," the producer said. "The way you handled that. You didn't back down." "I wasn't going to," Lorraine replied simply. "He was being rude, not just to me, but to everyone here. Someone had to say something." When the show came back from commercial, Lorraine was back to her usual self, bright, cheerful, engaging. So she welcomed her next guest with the same warmth she'd tried to give Prince Harry. The show continued as planned, but what had happened in those few minutes would be talked about for days, weeks, months to come. The clip would be shared thousands of times. People would debate who was right, who was wrong, what really happened. Some would say Lorraine was too harsh, that she should have been more understanding of whatever Prince Harry was going through. And others would praise her for standing her ground, for not tolerating disrespect just because someone had a title. But in that moment, in the studio, with the cameras rolling and the audience watching, Lorraine Kelly had done something that very few people have the courage to do. She had looked someone in the eye and said, "Enough is enough." Prince Harry had walked into that studio expecting to be treated with deference, with kid gloves, with the kind of reverence that royalty often receives. Instead, he found someone who treated him like anyone else. Someone who expected the same basic courtesy and respect that she gave to every single guest who sat in that chair. And when he couldn't or wouldn't provide that, Lorraine didn't bend. She didn't compromise her values or her show's integrity. She simply told him he could leave. It was a masterclass in standing up for yourself without losing your composure. Lorraine never raised her voice. She never resorted to insults or personal attacks. She simply stated facts, defended her position, and refused to be treated poorly. The contrast was stark. On one side, you had Prince Harry, visibly agitated, accusatory, defensive, unable to have a civil conversation without turning it into a confrontation. On the other side, you had Lorraine, calm, professional, firm but fair, maintaining her dignity even as she was being verbally attacked. When Prince Harry accused her of being fake, she put down her notes. When he said she was treating him like a circus act, she challenged him to explain why he kept agreeing to interviews if he felt that way. When he tried to paint her as the villain, she pointed out that he had walked in with an agenda. Every response Lorraine gave was measured, thoughtful, and devastatingly accurate. And perhaps that's what made Prince Harry so uncomfortable. Because deep down, beneath all the anger and accusations, he knew she was right. And he had agreed to be there. Nobody forced him. He could have said no to the interview. But he didn't. And now he was trying to blame everyone else for a situation he had willingly put himself in. Lorraine saw through it immediately. She didn't coddle him. She didn't make excuses for him. She held him accountable. And that's something that people in positions of power and privilege aren't always used to experiencing. The moment when she told him to leave was electric. When you could feel it through the television screen, the sharp intake of breath from the audience, the wide eyes of the crew members, the absolute certainty in Lorraine's voice. She wasn't bluffing. She wasn't trying to manipulate him into staying. She genuinely meant it. If he was unhappy, If he felt disrespected, if he couldn't have a basic conversation without being hostile, then he should leave. And he did. Because what else could he do? He'd backed himself into a corner. He'd made such a big deal about how terrible the interview was, how fake everything was, how disrespected he felt. Lorraine called his bluff. She gave him exactly what he claimed he wanted, the option to walk away. So he took it. But not before one last attempt to have the final word. That's when he turned around, when he couldn't resist trying to land one more blow, accusing Lorraine of thinking she was better than everyone else, trying to paint her as part of some nebulous machine that he was fighting against. But Lorraine didn't take the bait. She didn't get defensive. She didn't attack back. She simply stated the truth, that he had walked in looking for a fight, that he was making her the villain to justify his own behavior, that his anger was misdirected. And when he had no response to that, when he realized he couldn't win this argument, he left. For real this time. The silence that followed was deafening. In the empty chair, the stunned audience, the camera slowly panning to Lorraine, standing alone, processing what had just occurred. But then she did what she always does. She took a breath, she composed herself, and she addressed her audience with honesty and grace. She acknowledged what had happened, she explained her perspective, she maintained her standards, and then she moved on. Because that's what professionals do. They don't dwell on the drama. They don't milk the moment for attention. They acknowledge it, they address it, and then they continue doing their job. The rest of the show went on without incident. Lorraine interviewed other guests. She laughed. She engaged. She brought that same energy and enthusiasm that she brings to every single episode. Because that's who she is. One difficult guest, one awkward confrontation, wasn't going to change that. But for Prince Harry, the damage was done. He had shown up to a friendly talk show and managed to alienate not just the host, but the entire audience. He had displayed a level of entitlement and rudeness that shocked everyone watching. He had proven every criticism about him that he claimed was unfair. Because here's the thing, Lorraine gave him every opportunity to have a good interview. She welcomed him warmly. She prepared thoughtful questions. She tried to steer the conversation back on track when he started being difficult. She offered him a chance to have a real, genuine conversation. He rejected all of it. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to feel victimized. He wanted to turn a simple interview into a battle. And when he didn't get the reaction he expected, when Lorraine refused to play the role of either fawning sycophant or convenient villain, he couldn't handle it. So he left. And in doing so, he revealed exactly the kind of person he was. Not the misunderstood royal fighting against an unfair system. Not the victim of media persecution, but someone who couldn't handle a basic conversation without making it about himself and his grievances. Lorraine, meanwhile, emerged from the whole thing with her reputation not just intact, but enhanced. She had stood up to royalty. She had refused to be bullied or disrespected. She had maintained her professionalism and her principles, even when it would have been easier to just appease him and avoid the confrontation. She had been, in every sense of the word, the good guy. And that's why this moment mattered. Not because of the spectacle, not because of the drama, but because it was a clear, undeniable example of someone standing up for themselves and their values, regardless of who was sitting across from them. Titles don't matter. Status doesn't matter. What matters is how you treat people. And on that day, Lorraine Kelly treated Prince Harry with respect, right up until the moment he made it clear he wasn't going to reciprocate. And then she did what anyone should do in that situation. She stood her ground. She didn't apologize for expecting basic courtesy. She didn't back down from her position. She didn't let him rewrite the narrative to make himself the victim. She simply told the truth. And sometimes, the truth is the most powerful thing you can say. The interview that should have been a pleasant, but friendly conversation instead became a defining moment for both of them. For Lorraine, it was proof of her integrity and her strength. For Prince Harry, it was a revelation of his character that no amount of spin could undo. Because everyone saw it. Everyone heard it. The accusations, the hostility, the entitlement, the inability to take responsibility for his own choices. And everyone saw Lorraine handle it with grace, with firmness, and with an unwavering commitment to her values. That's what made it so compelling. Not the conflict itself, but the contrast. The difference between someone who maintains their composure and someone who loses it. The difference between accountability and blame shifting. The difference between professionalism and petulance. Lorraine Kelly showed everyone watching how to handle a difficult situation without compromising who you are. She showed that you can be kind and firm at the same time, and that you can stand up for yourself without being cruel, that you can maintain your standards without being self-righteous. And she showed that sometimes the best response to someone acting entitled and disrespectful is simply to refuse to engage with it, to calmly state your boundaries and let them make their choice. Prince Harry made his choice. He chose to walk out. He chose to end the interview. He chose to validate every criticism Lorraine had made of his behavior. And Lorraine, she chose to move forward. She chose to focus on her show and her audience and the guests who actually wanted to be there. Because at the end of the day, that's all you can do. You can control your own actions, your own responses, your own integrity. You can't control how other people behave. You can only decide how you're going to react to it. Lorraine reacted with class, with strength, with unwavering professionalism. And that's why, when people talk about this interview, they remember her as the hero of the story. Not because she was perfect,